Welcome to The Blue Dot, Northern Kentucky's premier political podcast, brought to you by the Kenton County Democratic Executive Committee.
The military mindset is so great for preparing someone for politics because, when you're going into battle, or you have an American flag on your shoulder, but you have no idea what the person's background is or their politics are. What matters is that they're the soldier to the left of you and you're going to take care of each other. And so it instills that mentality that we're all in this together.
Welcome back to the Blue Dot Podcast, where we've been talking a lot about flipping seats in Kentucky. But today we're going to talk about keeping Kentucky's 45th District blue. Representative Adam Moore was elected to the Kentucky House of Representatives in 2024. And we're lucky enough to have him join us today to talk about all of the great work he's been doing in the state legislature. Thanks for joining. I'm Natalie MacDonald.
And I'm Brian Koehl. That's right, Natalie. Representative Adam Moore serves District 45, which covers part of Fayette County, including Lexington, as well as part of Jessamine County. He was born and raised in Frankfort, graduated from Murray State University, worked for Kentucky legislators in Washington, D.C., and later served in the U.S. Army Reserve with deployments to Africa and Afghanistan. Following his military service, Adam worked as a project manager supporting military healthcare systems and built a small coaching business. Today, he serves in the Kentucky House while continuing his community and veterans advocacy work. Adam, thank you so much for being here. We're looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, great to be here and look forward to talking to you as well. And Natalie, you mentioned the original series was about flipping seats. I want everyone to know that we did flip a seat when we won in 2024.
Love it.
That is what we like to hear for sure. And you are, as we said, a first-term legislator. But you quickly become really a leading voice in some of Kentucky's most pressing issues, especially when it comes to the growth of data centers, election and democracy reforms, and of course, veterans advocacy. So you've been working on so much. So I'm just going to send it over to you if you want to talk a little bit about the main priorities that you've been working on.
Yeah, it does sound like it's kind of all over the map, but when I came in, I couldn't make any campaign promises. I was going to be, if I won, the 20th Democrat in the State House of Representatives, up against 80 Republicans. So I can't say I'm going to pass this law or that law. So I talked about working on issues. And one thing I thought I could do was create the first ever Veterans Caucus, a bipartisan group of legislators who could come together to serve those who've served and their families, make Kentucky the most military and veteran-friendly state as possible, either to stay here or to retire here after your service is done. And so that was really the number one priority for me, because it's not the expectation to get bills passed when you are a freshman or to get legislation passed when you're in the minority. So doing that was my top priority, and I was able to create that Veterans Caucus, which I now chair. But that has just allowed me to create so many relationships across the aisle that I now have the opportunity and the privilege to be a leading voice on data center legislation, other energy legislation, things around healthcare and affordability. So it's really cool that it's been a diving off point, but not something that I've been siloed into.
Yeah, the data centers, well, number one, the veteran advocacy is fantastic. And that whole idea of a Veterans Caucus, support caucus, is a great idea. And we've seen veterans, unfortunately, get kicked to the curb a little bit with the current national administration. So I really appreciate you doing that. And we have talked a lot about AI and especially data centers on the podcast. And it's a dichotomy, right? It brings a lot of great economic opportunity to Kentucky, but there are also a lot of risks and hidden costs. Can you kind of go through some of the pros and cons and where the legislation that you're spearheading lies?
Sure. And we could talk for 2 hours, just the three of us.
We only got,
and all the things. And what we've seen is that data centers, I would say, have largely built themselves as economic drivers of economic development. The utility companies, whether you're thinking of Duke Energy, Kentucky Power, are building it the same way as well. And there's always kind of the promise out there in the ether that in addition to, bringing in new jobs to build those data centers or to staff those data centers, that there is the potential to bring down utility rates. We don't really see it bringing down utility rates unless data centers locate somewhere that currently has excess capacity on the grid. So if I want to move into Eastern Kentucky and it currently has power generation for however many gigawatts, and there is an unmet need there, and so a data center comes in and it would not take building any new infrastructure, it could just plug in and play immediately, then yes, that cost of operating that that coal or that gas plant would then theoretically be dropped per customer because that load's being shared. What we see is that these new hyperscale data centers are coming in at hundreds of megawatts or even over a gigawatt, which is 1,000 megawatts, which means you have to build all new facilities. That's new power plants. That's new transmission, the huge lines that you see that will run for hundreds of miles from the plant to other places. That is upgrading the distribution system, the boxes you see as well. And all those could be hidden costs that could theoretically be passed on to ratepayers. So when I got into the data center issue, it was protecting people like the three of us. It was just protecting our small businesses, our residential homeowners, renters from having their utility bills go up if a data center was to move in. That's how I got into it, and it has evolved so much from there.
And there's also this whole environmental piece of it as well. We've seen some environmental protections be negated or walked back on. So I don't know if you have any input to that as well. I think that's a really important part of this that might get kind of put under the rug.
Right. We are all worried about emissions. We talk so much about these closed loop systems. Well, there's still going to be some off gassing. You cannot maintain 100% of the liquid. There still will be evaporation. Do we have other chemicals that are evaporating along with that? If you don't have a closed loop system, what are the emissions either through the air as gases or liquid in the water system that could be going into the local sewer or septic system as well? A big thing has also been noise, the decibels that come out of there.
Yeah.
Not just, Brian and Natalie, are they annoying to you, the neighbors? Will they drive away wildlife, which is part of a thriving ecosystem that's nearby? There's also been this accumulation of heat in the area at local zones. Will that heat have negative impacts on the local environment, plant life, animal life? These are all questions, and I'm not here to say on the podcast that we know that they're all detrimental. It's literally a fact to say that we don't know. We are at the Wild West on this. We are at the kind of tip of the spear on this, in that we are right now living through the early days of hyperscale data center. We do not know what even the short term, so of course the medium term or long term effects are of having these alongside our natural environments and alongside people. So that is something that there is no research on, and we are just kind of waiting and seeing what comes out of these large hyperscale centers.
Yeah, I mean, it is the Wild West, and because the usage primarily is for generating artificial intelligence, we don't really know where AI is going. So we could be building data centers today that really could be useless or low functioning or obsolete a few years down the line. There's all this expense and all this potential environmental damage and effects to the the grid, et cetera, and then it could be abandoned because AI takes a different turn or new technology comes out that makes what we have today obsolete. So it's not like we're building for known storage demands and cloud capacity. It's really we're building proactively for something that I think a lot of people don't really even know where it's going to go.
Absolutely. We've seen this play out in Ohio, directly north of us, in Kentucky. So when they were trying to think about load growth, how much generation would they need to be added to their grid for new hyperscale data centers? They thought they had to build another 30 gigawatts. So I think 30,000 megawatts of power just for new data centers. That number has been revised down to 5.8 gigawatts. So they've cut 80% off that. So it is so much a market of speculation. And what happens when the next generation of chips use a third of the power required of the current generation of chips? Well, now do you have abandoned warehouses and buildings that are on historic prime farmland that are sitting there because it's unnecessary? And we're building all these new hyperscale data centers when you and I are already having a conversation over Riverside. We already have Gmail addresses. We already have Google Gemini and ChatGPT through OpenAI. So they're talking about orders of magnitude of more AI out there, orders of magnitude of more data processing out there when we already have all these technologies and services. So the question is, what is it being built for? A lot of people are concerned about the surveillance state. As you and I go walk out among the streets, as we drive our cars, are we being watched and listened to and recorded without ever opting into that 24/7? I think we all kind of have a joke that we have a conversation with our spouse, about needing to get asparagus. And then we see an ad on our phone that says, by the way, we have a sale on asparagus. It just feels like we're all just being watched and surveilled all the time. And I think there is a concern that as we build up this capacity, is it just for more of a surveillance state in the future as well?
And you're sitting representative, so I like to kind of get a little sneak behind the curtain. What are you hearing? Do people want to act on this, or is it more like, I don't know, I want to keep hands off because there's so much to take into consideration? I'm just curious what's being said down there in Frankfort.
Well, I'm not going to keep my hands off at all. I'm going to keep being a leader on this issue and trying to drive the narrative. I think the bare minimum that we are going to do is we will put ratepayer protections into Kentucky statutes. We will make sure that you bring your own power or have to fully contractually be obligated to pay for any power that you take off the grid, to include upgrades and new developments as well. I think we'll get that put into statute next year. That's the low-hanging fruit, and other states have already started doing that. I think we'll put into statute some type of application fee for data centers that might go into an escrow account as well, that might pay out if you ever do need to close down or shut down a data center, if you have stranded assets that are left out there. That will also help prevent speculators from coming in and buying up land if they don't already have a customer to then take that over. That's happening in a couple places in Kentucky. One of them close to me is in Mercer County right now, where that is kind of going on. So I think we can get that through the legislature. Now, what I would like to see is, how do we increase transparency? Ryan, Natalie, you all have probably heard about, the NDAs that are being signed, that a team of lawyers will come out of California representing Google or Amazon, and they're going to have all the local council members or the fiscal board sign these NDAs, and then these decisions are made behind closed doors. Can we make sure that we have as much transparency as possible, as much public input as possible? And I think it was maybe Brian started out on this topic saying that there's supposed to be all this economic development tied to it, whether it's new jobs and revenue. Well, if that's true, then instead of hiding behind closed doors, come be transparent, be public. Say, we want to work with you collaboratively instead of secretly. And this is what we want to do to be a beneficial member of your community. And if that is helping with the property taxes, if that's helping getting teachers increased pay, if that is lowering your bills on your homeowners' things, then that is all things that they should be proud of, and they should be come out there pitching themselves as a new partner in the community instead of sliding in and sneaking in through the back door.
Yeah, we want to see that. We want to see some of that revenue and some of that profit stay locally. And that another aspect of this are the tax incentives that are dangling out in front of these companies to build, where it is not only is their revenue going to go to some corporation somewhere else, it's not even going to stay locally, but B, then they're going to have tax cuts, tax incentives, low tax rates that aren't going to actually feed that tax base in the local community and help it to thrive.
And there is a tax break for data centers right now. It's a sales tax exemption. So they would still be obligated for locality taxes, occupational taxes. But anything that they purchase to put into that warehouse that is going to be a data center, they would not have to pay the same sales tax that you, Brian, and Natalie would have to pay. Anyone who's listening to this, if you go out to buy a server, you go out to buy a laptop, you go out to buy a fan or a cooling system, you will pay your 6% sales tax on that in Kentucky. Well, a hyperscale data center would not have to pay that. And that is potentially millions of dollars in lost revenue that could help make up for shortfalls in SNAP, help make up for shortfalls in Medicaid and other critical programs.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're obviously taking leadership on that. And I think maybe some of this bold leadership may come from your experience in the Army Reserve, perhaps. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your experience there and what you've been working on to help veterans. And if there's anything that isn't getting enough attention from policymakers here in Kentucky with our veterans. I know you mentioned the Veterans Caucus. There's also the Veterans Council in Kentucky.
So there's different organizations, of course. And so what the Veterans Caucus is for, and anyone who's listening to this, they can go and they can research. You can type into Google caucuses, Kentucky legislature. And a caucus is a group of legislators organized around a certain issue. So there is a bourbon caucus for those who represent areas with bourbon distilleries. And there's the equine caucus for those who represent areas with horse farms. And so, of course, the Veterans Caucus, it is members who do not need to be a veteran themselves, but those who care deeply about supporting our veterans. We have more than 40 active members across both the House and the Senate, across both Republicans and Democrats. And so I'm focused on that Veterans Caucus. And if there are more civilian organizations, but what we do is we just bring the legislators together. And what I try to do with those meetings is I bring in representatives of either government organizations that serve our veterans or veteran service organizations. Think the VFW, think of the American Legion, and they can tell us directly, these are what our members need. These are what our members are missing in Kentucky. And a lot of them are part of national networks. And so they can say, Tennessee is doing this, and we need to get on board. We're falling behind. We talk so much about economic competitiveness in Kentucky, about losing businesses across the river to Ohio or south of the border to Tennessee. We need to think about maintaining some of those best people who've served our country, who we want to continue to be or become Kentuckians after they've served as well.
Yeah, that's for sure. As I said earlier, I feel like veterans have kind of gotten short shrift here recently. And after the sacrifice and the service that they've given our country, we need to try to do everything we can to help with any health or other issues they may have. And then also, as you just said, take advantage of the experience and the skills that they develop through their service to the country and apply that in a civilian manner. I love to look across Kentucky and U.S. Congress and look at how many veterans are in there serving and what that experience and skill and expertise and having worked with so many different types of people in so many diverse situations, what that brings to bear in that role. And we can apply that to so many other occupations.
The military mindset is so great for preparing someone for politics because, like, when you're going into battle, you have an American flag on your shoulder. You have your last name on one side of your chest. You have U.S. Army or your service on the other side of your chest. I'm an Army guy. I'm used to the Army uniform. Some other uniforms might be a little different, but you have no idea what the person's background is or their politics are. Like, what matters is that they're the soldier to the left of you and you're going to take care of each other. And so it instills that mentality that we're all in this together. And so you can bring that to the political world as well, too. I represent a district that's, I think, 41% Democrats, 45% Republican, and the rest are independent and third party. Like, yeah, I'm a Democrat in the state house, but if I'm only representing Democratic interests, I'm missing out on something like 59% of the people I'm supposed to represent. So I think that the military mindset is great of thinking of it from that perspective.
Yeah, we had George Wright on the podcast. We did a military month last year, and George Wright was one of our guests, and he leads up the Veterans Council in Kentucky. And it's so amazing to see how many veterans are stepping up to run for office. And I can't think of, like you said, a better background for someone to take up for a leadership position like that. So, thank you so much for what you're doing, and obviously thanks for your service as well.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, we spoke a little prior to the podcast getting started about our current Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and how he's redirecting military culture and sidelining women and people of color. What he's doing to the careers of some of these service people have put 10, 20, 30 years into service and then some split decision and they're gone. And now he's pushing this war ethos narrative and mandating testosterone training, all this crazy stuff. It seems like this administration and the MAGA right in general is trying to redefine masculinity, and it's become so toxic and so confrontational. And I know you have some thoughts on that, and we wanted to kind of discuss that with you a little bit.
There's a lot to chew into there.
I know.
No, you're good. So I first watched Band of Brothers when I was deployed in Africa, and I'm rewatching it with my wife now because she's never seen it. Her parents immigrated from Europe. Her grandmother was in Auschwitz. Another one of her grandfathers was in another labor camp. They were from what was then Czechoslovakia. Her parents ended up fleeing as teenagers from Soviet occupation. So this is like part of her history too in the war in Europe and the European front. And when Colonel Winters, then Captain Winters in Band of Brothers, is talking about the different lieutenants he wants to step up and lead Easy Company, one of the guys he describes as someone who's seen too many war movies, but doesn't really know how to actually lead people. And I think that's the perfect way of expressing Pete Hegseth. He's never really actually led people. When he was in the military, he never took a position of command. He actually was forced out, I believe, because he couldn't continue in his position. And then now he's the guy who watched, Rambo a bunch of times, which is great entertainment. The Rambo series of movies is fantastic entertainment, but that is not how you lead as, the Secretary of Defense, or as he calls himself, the Secretary of War. And I think you said kind of refer to toxic masculinity, Brian. It's like, yeah, well, the person who was the most testosterone is the biggest man. I think being masculine or a good man or whatever is about you protect and you provide. If you think about that in the military, you're protecting your nation. And the local level, you think about you protect your household. And you think about males historically being the providers, and maybe that's any number of ways, whether that's the one who went out there and you hunted to bring down the big game and hunter-gatherer society, which hint the women actually provided most calories back then when they were collecting the berries and everything else. But it's about being able to protect those you care about, providing for those that you care about. It's not about ripping your shirt off and showing how cool your tattoo is. That strikes me as someone who is insecure. So, whereas if you're secure in your own masculinity, you don't really have to brag about how masculine you are. You'll just be a dude and you'll take care of things.
I like that. Just be a dude. And it is funny because when I hear about how this whole hyper masculinity from a female perspective, it's a little weird because growing up, I guess the men in my life, my brothers, my uncles, my father, they were manly to me because they were strong and protective, and they were also very respectful. They taught me how to respect myself. They teach other men in their lives how to respect themselves, how to respect women. Now they're trying to redefine it. And I think it's interesting to hear you put it into perspective. It isn't about, like you said, ripping off the shirt and the testosterone and everything else and the war ethos.
I mean, Pete Hegseth, the Andrew Tates of the world, who are these masculine influencers, are people who've literally been incredibly accused or actually found liable for sexual assault or just assault in general of hurting people. And if that is what they want masculinity to be, like, I'm big and strong and I show that by hurting people, then no, that is like internal weakness. That is, you are internally weak and and insecure. And so the only way to feel good about yourself is to hurt others, to make yourself feel bigger. And that's not what being a man is. That's not what being masculine is. No, it is, like you said, I think the men were in your childhood, Natalie, who grew up around you. My dad wasn't a man because he had a rifle and was a deer hunter. He was a man because he raised my sister and I to be good humans. He taught us how to take care of the car. He made sure that we knew what a hard day's work was and what honest work was, how to live life with integrity. I think those things are very much needed, more so than a YouTube channel yelling how actually it was a mistake to give women the right to vote or whatever it is that they're going on and on about these days.
Gosh, where does that come from? And I don't know if you've seen the viral social media experiment when they ask women, would you rather be alone in the woods with a bear or a man? I don't know if you've seen this, but many women, they said the bear. And it goes back to growing up, I was around men who didn't make me want to choose the bear, right? And then you see Pete Hegseth, and they say these things like you say, women shouldn't be able to vote and all that kind of stuff. And even some of the stuff they're saying are support rape culture with Andrew Tate and those types of figures. It's really just very disappointing.
I grew up with, what was it to be a man? It was the strong, silent type. Now it's the loud, brash type. It's a total 180 from what we grew up with men being. When you're secure in your silence, that's real masculinity and security.
Yeah, I remember last year, or it's probably 2024, I guess, because it was Obama doing some campaign speeching, but he had a 10-minute segment on what it meant to be a man, and it was about compassion and serving others, just like service leadership. And it was very impactful to me. I mean, being a man is basically just being a good, caring, compassionate citizen. That's the example that we need to set. That's the example we all need to set, men and women alike.
And I think the world would be a better place if we had more people who are compassionate out there.
Yeah.
Should be seen as a strength.
Hey, we did want to also talk about your working on some of the broader election and democracy legislation, because the whole election integrity thing that's going on and the gerrymandering. I think it's kind of like the piece by piece destruction of our democracy, or at least the attempt to do that.
Yeah, this might get a little in the weeds for the listener, so bear with me here. We'll try to make it as played out as possible. So if you haven't heard of Citizens United, essentially super PACs can spend unlimited money in elections, corporations can give to campaigns, which essentially drowns out the voice and the dollars even that the normal person can give to a candidate. Like, I do want to be able to raise money through donations. If I'm a good candidate, then hopefully people will donate money to me, and then that way I'm more likely to win the election. But if Elon Musk can write $10 million to a Senate campaign, well, my donors can't compete with that at all. So Hawaii has a bill to limit what corporations can do in our elections. We also can't see who some of the donors are in these super PACs. And so we can see that the name of the super PAC that's spending in an election, but we can't see who their donors are. Arizona has what I call a PAC sunlight bill. So shine some sunlight, some transparency, incorporating that into what we're doing in Kentucky. As we look at AI being used to essentially depict people and their voices, Tennessee passed what's called the Elvis Act. And a lot of that came from the music industry because country music artists did not want AI stealing their voices and then making songs and tracks. So incorporating what Tennessee has done with the Elvis Act to steer clear of impersonations, either the likeness of, the sound of a politician around campaigns. So those are some things that other states have already done. When we think about gerrymandering, Virginia has one of the best, I would say, systems in place. Their system is so good that even when the legislature and the governor signed a bill and sent it to the people, and the people all voted for it, it was still unconstitutional for them to change their maps to gerrymander because their constitution is so strong against it. So we could actually take a hint from what Virginia is doing for fair districts, where you actually vote your community and you don't have districts that look like, salamanders is where gerrymander came from. So there are some things that we're doing there. There's some other provisions in that legislation as well, but that came out of the fact that people often feel like their voice doesn't matter as much anymore because it's overwhelmed by super PACs and by dark spending, or because the politicians get to choose their voters instead of voters choosing their elected leaders. So my legislation was made to kind of target those things, because what you hear so much is that from the White House and those on the right is people don't trust elections because so many illegals are voting. And that's been found to be false over and over again. It's just a talking point. Yeah. But I do think they're onto something, that people do now distrust elections. But I think it is the flood of dark money, the flood of super PACs, the rampant gerrymandering, the terribly partisan gerrymandering going on. So I'm working on actually addressing the real reasons that people are losing confidence in our elections.
Yeah, I think some of that's going to backfire. I'm hoping. So I just saw where Elon Musk and his own super PAC now, he's authorizing something like 120 million, and I think it could be up to 200 million to keep the Senate and the House Republican. But it's out there in the news, and Elon Musk is such a toxic brand. I'm hoping that there will actually be a groundswelling, kind of a grassroots rejection of all that money. It's like you can pour as much money as you want to in an election, but we are seeing through that, and people are looking for who are the candidates that meet my values. And I have seen some recent examples where tons of money been poured in, mostly on the Republican side, and a Democrat still won with a lot less of an investment just because the voters are starting to become aware of that and are more savvy than they used to be.
I do think that there is an argument to be made that essentially declining returns on more and more money that is spent.
Right.
But that being said, I do think that you have to have money to win. So I think one case made was a Supreme Court race in Wisconsin that Elon Musk poured a ton of money into.
Yes.
And I think they outspent the other side, like $40 million to $10 million. So again, like 4-1. But the side that won had the people on their side, but they also had $10 million on that side. I think if it was $40 million to $2 million, then we probably would have ended up with the other person winning that Supreme Court seat. So you still have to have enough money to get your name out so people know who they're voting for. So I think, yes, there's going to be diminishing returns if the money floods in more and more and more, that you're spending more money per vote. But at the same time, those, I would say on my side, on our side, you still need to raise enough money to get your name out there. Me just being against, big money is not going to be enough to win when I'm in the Lexington, Kentucky TV market. I'm going to have to raise and spend close to $200,000 because it's an expensive market. And that's what it takes, because people need to know who Adam Moore is when they go to vote on November 3rd.
I think it's getting through to people. It's all kind of fun and games when they're putting money into like your candidate. But now we saw what happened with Massey, and we're seeing it everywhere where people are like, wait a minute, I don't want all of this crazy outside money to come in here, and they're seeing how much it is. And I think it's universal that people don't want this and they want limits on it. So I commend you for taking that on. Thank you. And hopefully we get some good legislation around that.
At least I hope it frames the narrative. I hope it gets people to pay attention. I'm trying to also work with outside groups who really care about our elections that are nonpartisan, because I'm not going to sit here and lie to your listeners and say we're definitely going to pass this and Kentucky's elections are going to be the new gold standard across the U.S. Like, I don't think my version of the bill is going to pass as is. If we pass anything, it would probably be a watered down version that would have compromises tied to it. But if we pass anything, it's going to be because the people rise up and speak out for it, because they're making phone calls, they're sending emails, they're writing letters, they're showing up in the streets or at their member's office to say that we need this. And if you don't pass them like this, then we're going to vote you out. And until people start to feel that their seat's getting hot and they might face consequences at the ballot box, then they don't have that incentive to essentially change, the way they've been doing things.
And thanks for being transparent too by saying, you know what, it's not going to probably pass without some compromises. And we obviously need more of that too. I think one of the main things we've been hearing a lot about is transparency. And we can actually give you an opportunity to give us some more transparency with a lightning round that we do with all of our guests, if you'd be up for that.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, I'm ready to be struck.
Right. It's not bad. Just 5 fun, quick questions, just to end on a happy note here before we let you go. So we talked about your military experience. What is the best leadership lesson that you learned in the military?
You have to make a decision and lead with confidence. That you can make the right decision or the wrong decision, but making no decision is not an option. You have to make a decision and move forward, and then you can adjust if you need to. But you can't just sit there and do nothing.
I like that. I feel like in my
Love
own
it.
personal work that sometimes you just have to make that executive decision. If it's not the right one, you'll figure it out at the end. All right. So when I go visit my family in Lexington, what's one restaurant that I must try?
Okay. So I want you to come and have coffee at Luna's Coffee, Wine, and Butterfly Cafe. It's in the 45th House District.
Whoa. Okay.
Now, North Lime Coffee and Donuts has some of the best donuts in town, and they have a one off Clay's Mill that's also in the 45th House District. So then go to there. And then I'm a really big fan of Bella Cafe in Palomar as well. But I've got to say Ramsey's. Ramsey's is classic Southern food.
Classic.
Everything is fried. There's so many things on the menu though. I highly recommend the buffalo chicken. And they have one of those in the 45th House District off Harrodsburg Road as well. So yeah, get some coffee in the morning at Luna's, get some donuts, go and get Ramsey's, then maybe finish the day back at Luna's for a glass of wine.
And maybe be up a couple pounds.
Vacation calories don't count, Natalie.
Well, I'll be down there for the Forward Together dinner, and my nephew lives down there right now. So next time I'll be sure. I definitely want to get those donuts.
Good.
All right. If you could wear anything to work, would it be a suit and tie or boots and jeans?
I'm going to say neither. Sorry, it's a lightning round. So my civilian job is I'm a CrossFit coach. So I would wear my athletic shorts, my T-shirt, a pair of my Reebok Nano CrossFit shoes, and I would just feel great. And whatever the day hands me, I can take it on. That's the most comfortable thing, and I would definitely wear that if I could.
It is comfortable, right? And then you don't have an excuse to not go work out. You're already in your clothes, like just get it done. So,
amen.
So that's your persona. You got the beard, you got the military background, you're a fitness coach. But what's the most surprising thing that about you that maybe a lot of people don't know?
I am definitely a natural introvert. I never could have done this, run for office before. And I wanted to get into politics, but I could have never been the candidate. I was the person who was shy to speak. I was the person who was quiet and very meek. And you learn to speak up for yourself in the military, but you're not very verbose in the military or anything. You have your team that you work with and you can give orders. But what enabled me to do this was being a CrossFit coach. And then you're yelling over the sounds of fans and clanging barbells, and you just learn to be the center of attention. You're making sure everyone's doing things the right way and that they can see you and they can hear you. And it teaches you kind of how to command a room and to be big and to be loud. So yeah, I'm very much a natural introvert. Whenever I go to a big event, I'm still looking for people I already know to introduce me to everyone else because I'm not the best person to just get out there around strangers. But yeah, being a CrossFit coach is what allowed me to be a politician, not studying political science, working on Capitol Hill in D.C.
Well, that makes sense because you're interacting with people. In fitness, when you feel good, you feel confident, and confidence is what makes you feel like you can get out there. But anyway, we'll end on what gives you hope about Kentucky's future.
What gives me hope about Kentucky's future is literally the people here. The coolest thing about this job is I get to meet so many new people. Like I would have never met you, the two of you, if I was not doing what I'm doing right now. And it's the same way every time I go and have a coffee meeting at Luna's, every time I have a lunch meeting at Bella Cafe, whenever someone comes and has office time with me in Frankfort, like there are just like so many incredible people that if you turn the news off for a day and you just go out there and you just have face-to-face conversations, your faith in humanity can be restored. Part of that is, what is it we say, go touch grass or whatever?
Yeah.
But turn off Facebook and turn off the news. The people are still amazing. People are still amazing. Everyone's personal story could be made into like a made-for-TV movie. There's so much to gain by just talking to that person who might be next to you wherever you are. And that's what gives me hope, is that, again, the people are still incredible. We're all still Kentuckians. We're all still Americans. We still love our country. No matter how bad the news looks on TV, they're just trying to get your clicks and your eyeballs. So it's the people that, maintain my faith.
Awesome. I love it.
Well, I couldn't agree with that more. And also, I just, am really so happy that you said coolest thing and then Natalie and Brian all in the same sentence. That made my day.
Facts.
I mean, wow, this was the best podcast ever.
Clip that. I'm putting that on my
I'm clipping that, man. Oh, yeah. That's going to all the socials. Well, so thanks so much for joining us, Adam. It was a lot of fun. And, I know you're an introvert, but you have this magnetism around you. And I think people can see that you're a person that service leadership, you really embody that. So we really appreciate having you on and sharing that with everyone. How can people learn more about you, your campaign, support you? Where do they go?
Absolutely. So always you can Google Adam Moore, but my website is kydeservesmore.com. So again, kydeservesmore.com. You can just, of course, read about me. You can see my endorsements and my bio. You can see the platform there. There are also ways for you to sign up for my newsletter, which I think is fantastic. You should definitely follow that. But you also can learn how to join our volunteer team or even contribute and donate if you're someone who is able to help make sure that we can get our word out. But come there, find a way to be involved. We have opportunities for everyone, whether you are an introvert or an extrovert.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks
Great
again.
stuff. Thanks so much.
Thank you both.
Take care. Well, that's it for today. Thanks so much for joining, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming podcasts or exclusive material. And don't forget, you can join the conversation at our Facebook and Instagram pages or at blue.podcast.com. Until next time, stay curious, keep facts in focus, never stop fighting for what matters. Peace out, everybody.